Hey guys, Zen here, and the attacking side of Rainbow Six Siege is going through a massive rework in Year 6. Now, for a very long time, the lineup hasn't changed too much. You're almost always going to see a hard breacher like Ace or Thermite, a support operator to help get the wall open, and maybe someone to watch your back like Nomad or Gridlock. But specialty ops, ones that kind of create their own path to get the job done, are a rare breed, and some of the most slept on ops in Siege are getting an opportunity to be great. And so, the big buzz recently has been the huge buff to Nokk. Now, this operator has honestly never been considered a powerful choice, and to some extent even a viable one, but what she's now capable of changes that entire conversation, because now she's the only operator in the game that doesn't trigger proximity based gadgets. So for those that don't know, in Crimson Heist, Nokk is getting a buff where she no longer triggers any gadget that has a proximity effect while her Hell gadget is active. So the proximity alarm, Ella's Gersmot, Malusi's Banshee, Kapkan's EDD, and even metal detectors will no longer activate for as long as Nokk has her gadget active in their area. This is one of those deep layered changes that is honestly frightening for the defensive side. The first part of it is obviously that Nokk won't trigger this stuff, and so she isn't being affected by what each of these gadgets do. When it comes to the Banshee and Gersmot, it means she doesn't have to deal with being stunned and slowed down and having to retreat back away from this stuff until the effects wear out. That's just not a concern. With Kapkan, it quite literally saves her life, or at the very least preserves her health, so she can withstand more damage in future gunfights. Now, the other and more important aspect of this update is that the defenders have never had to face an attacker like this before. You see, when Malusi places a Banshee or Ella throws up a Gersmot, the general area of these gadgets is covered. As a defender, you know the attacker is gonna have to take them out by shooting them or using utility or by simply walking into them and causing them to go off, and because you know this, they are technically watching your back. You don't really have to worry about that area because you know some form of intel will be given by the attackers that are forced to deal with or counter the gadget. With Nokk bypassing that, it basically means that those gadgets are never watching your back against her, and the only way to be sure she's around is by having barbed wire or if she steps on a goo. Otherwise, you'll have to be paying close attention to where she's lurking. The last bit about this change to Nokk that I thought to note is that for the most part, Nokk always sided with her similarities to Vigil by hiding from cams, and it's an insanely useful tool. But she has always had elements of Cav as well, but because her footsteps aren't totally silent and she has always had to deal with defender utility, she never really struck that fear into the defenders that Cav can with the attackers. After this buff, there is no doubt that Nokk is now the scariest attacker on the map, and she finally acts like the attacking version of Cav because there aren't those dead giveaways of her presence anymore. If you're looking for my opinion, I absolutely love this. It doesn't always give Nokk the upper hand because the glitch effect will still happen when she runs, and glitching or running through these gadgets will still trigger all of them. But she is now the exclusive attacker to choose if you're dealing with a trap heavy lineup on defense, and I love that it's her because I think it's how she should have always worked. The next update is to my main, Callie, and they have finally listened to the feedback about her most recent buff, or nerf, or however you define it, but now she's back to downing 3 armors with 1 clean hit. But things change a lot with Rook armor, and he's even more of a counter than he was before. Now, with Rook armor, Callie will only down a 3-speed operator, and it'll take 2 shots just to down 2 and 1-speed operators, which means it takes a total of 3 shots to finally take out the enemy. It is a rough life for a Callie main sometimes, but Ubisoft does detail why they decided to go this way. Our main objective with Callie is to make her a viable and balanced operator. In general, this requires us to strike the right balance between ability, the LV Lance explosive, and loadout. For Callie in particular, this depends on 2 main elements. The first is that Callie brings a great amount of utility to the game. The LV explosive Lance can deal with gadgets, including bulletproof gadgets, and ones behind electrified reinforcements. The second element is the CSRX. This primary weapon is in charge of most of her killing potential, and keeping this weapon in line is key to avoiding an overpowered operator. And so to me, honestly here, I think Ubisoft is scared of Callie ultimately. It's a strong statement, yes, but I think they're worried that if the needle goes just a little too far in any direction, that Callie will be overpowered and cause immense frustration in the community, and I respect that. However, the piece that I think isn't considered nearly as much is that Callie is the most risky gunfighter in the game with one of the highest skill ceilings you can choose. The risk to reward element of Callie is paper thin, and I understand that the reward can cause a ton of frustration, but to require 3 shots out of the CSRX to kill an enemy, it just seems a bit much. Also, let's be honest here, she's competing with Thatcher, the definition of a support operator in Rainbow Six Siege, and I get that he's always banned, but in the event he's not, she loses that battle every single time. So for me, I think the Rook armor should save a 3-speed from immediate death and down them, but I think with a 2-speed, it should critically damage after 1 shot, with it taking only 1 more shot to kill, which basically saves them from a down. And then for a 1-speed, it acts like it does after the update of requiring 3 shots to finally kill a full health 1-speed operator. But I've got to be honest, all of of these rules are a lot to always consider mid-round, and I think the devs should just test the waters of what an actually powerful Callie looks like. It worked for Amaru. At first, she had all these rules and these ways of toning her back, but once they kind of loosened the reins, she was great, and she actually feels powerful now, which can be a good thing. I recognize we probably can't take another launch Lion or Ella, but Callie is not an easy operator to just pick up and be successful with, and so to those that master her, she should feel powerful, and she should pin down the defenders and make them feel uncomfortable. So yeah, to my fellow Callie mains, I think we'll get there, honestly. She's on the way to being an important operator in the meta, but with that heavy of a counter, I just think it'll be more frustrating to actually play Callie than it will be to play against her. Next up is the hardest hitting nerf to Blackbeard I think this game has ever seen, because what used to be an 800 health shield in front of this man's face is now a 20 health gadget that can only stand just one bullet from basically any weapon. Now, Blackbeard is my most detested operator in Rainbow Six Siege, because you know that every time you hear that shield crack, he survived what would have been a headshot, and in a one-shot headshot game, it means he survived death, and it almost always fills me with rage. Now, I will say that on a window, there just isn't a better option. Blackbeard is the king of holding the angle, and it's because his shield gives him the opportunity to fire back, even if bullets are flying through the shield. However, with just 20 health, his gadget only accepts one bullet and is now very delicate before it breaks, and so it gives the defenders a much better chance at winning the gunfight and removing him from the round. Now, one shot could still be all that's required to survive, especially because we're talking Siege, but even two is a crowd, and I think overall, Blackbeard will feel this change more than any of the others he's received over the years. But on top of the gadget nerf, his main weapon, the MK17, is also getting a nerf, and they're bringing the damage down to 40 from a massive 49, and this is harsh. They say, by reducing the HP of his shields and damage of his MK17, this will slightly reduce both his killing potential and survivability. Given that the majority of the time, Blackbeard ends matches with shield economy to spare, this change should be fair to both sides, as it brings him more in line with other attackers. Now, even though Blackbeard's weapon hit hard, the fire rate is pretty slow, and so now that the damage has been reduced this dramatically, just getting kills with him won't be easy. And so for me, I'm all for it. I would really like to see Blackbeard get a rework, and I think it's kind of simple. Flip the shield upside down. Instead of guarding his face and punishing players with good aim and shooting skill, have a shield that defends more of his body and force more precise gunfights. I think it could still be effective, and if you're not aiming for the head, you'll be at risk to lose the interaction. It's just each time he gets nerfed, he'll spend a season or two with a lower pick rate and interest, but somehow, some way, he always crawls back up and continues to be a struggle to balance. Now, as far as Twitch, she's being nerfed again, and to some, this may not actually be a nerf, but for me, I don't really see it any other way. So, Twitch is losing the flash grenades and gaining smoke grenades, and again, for some people, this isn't a bad trade, and to be fair, it isn't. But the reason why it's happening in the first place is because Twitch has begun winning at a higher rate again, and she's also proving to be more lethal after getting the flashes, and so Ubisoft is looking to tone that back. I guess it comes down to your definition of a nerf, but it's typically when an operator is doing a little too well or getting better than expected, and a change happens to tone it back. That's the goal here with Twitch, and I think it'll pull back her aggression a bit and ultimately funnel her into being more supportive. Now, speaking of balance, Ubisoft released the latest pick and win rate data for the season, and it's simply fascinating. Starting on attack, there are a few names that stand out. Ashe, for one, is literally moving off of the grid, even after her big change, which removed the flashbangs from her kid and gave her another breaching round. I actually think she's done really well with it. It's definitely toned down her aggression and given her more ability to take out defender utility. Blackbeard has crawled up as the highest winning attacker again, and so obviously this upcoming nerf is a result of that. Ace is still dominating the hard breach meta, but poor Blitz is starting to fall off hard. I know the shield guard nerf was a big move to affect mainly Monty and Clash, but Blitz suffered hard from this because even an impact can open him up now and cause big problems trying to push a site. In the current meta, he just can't survive all the defenses in his way and thus can't do his job effectively. And look, I'm not complaining. The Blitz meta was a nightmare, but he's struggling, guys. And so yeah. Over on defense is a very similar story, actually. Jaeger still can't be contained, and Melusi might surprise you with her spot, but that's only because when she isn't banned, she's usually picked. But at least Tachanka has moved up a bit, but of course Clash is kind of slipping as well. Now, as for Tachanka, I think it's criminal that he hasn't been given at least a 1.5 scope. Like, the fact that Capkin has one and Tachanka doesn't consistent, I think hurts him bad, and I really want to see what a Tachanka meta looks like now that he's a pretty good option for area denial. But I think for year 6 season 1, these graphs are going to look wildly different, and it's great because they've looked pretty similar throughout year 5, and a new meta is just over the horizon here. Ban rates are pretty typical as well, with Thatcher, Blackbeard, and Jackal leading attack, and Mira, Melusi, and Valkyrie on top with defense. And then lastly for this video, guys, is a little rapid fire. Dokkaebi loses her frags again, this time for flashbangs. She's also getting the new Gone 6 secondary and losing the C75. Finka is swapping frags out for stun grenades and is also getting a Gone 6 by losing the GSH 18 pistol. And then Mozzie will hint at the distance of a pest with a faster blinking speed, and so as you get closer to a pest with your drone, you'll have a better sense of the radius. Finally, the G36C is getting a recoil buff so it can better compete with the ARX and R4C, and that is everything. And so quite the update for the start of year 6, and of course to kick off Crimson Heist, and I think this update for next season is going to be an interesting study. But that's it for the video today, guys, and the designer's notes. If you did enjoy this one, drop a like and subscribe with notifications if you haven't yet joined up. With that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Hey, I'm out.